Welcome to the Springs in the Desert podcast. We're so happy that you're here with us. We're those friends that you can take with you wherever you are on the path of infertility. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Springs in the Desert podcast. We're so glad that you're here with us. And I'm really excited to today have a conversation with two wonderful women. This is Allie, by the way, your host for this episode. And I'm here also with Kimberly, our lovely co-founder of Springs in the Desert. Kimberly, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks, Allie.
Good. And we're really excited because we have a new guest this morning, and her name is Jen. And we're really excited to hear a little bit more from her. And these two women, Kimberly and Jen, have both adopted. And so this is National Adoption Month. So we wanted to have an episode where we just got to talk a little bit more about that. Adopting in the context of infertility, and just hear more from these two women about their experiences. They both have different experiences. Jen's adopted internationally, and Kimberly is adopted privately and through foster care, right, Kimberly?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes.
Cool. So we'll get to hear a little bit more about them, and maybe talk a little bit more about like discerning adoption and what that looks like, again, in the context of infertility. And then also this episode's going to air the day before Thanksgiving. So we thought it would be a fitting time to talk about giving thanks and gratitude, even when, as we all know, like in the infertility experience, and I think in the adoption experience, I've heard from both of you, like there's a lot of patience required and challenges often. And so what it looks like to have gratitude, like in the midst of all that, and just knowing God's working out his beautiful plan in his time. So that's where we want to go today. And we're really glad to have you along with us. And just to kind of open it up, I thought we would have the opportunity to have Jen just share a little bit about herself. And maybe you could tell us like how you found Springs too.
Sure. So good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be on here today. So I found Springs through Instagram, and I really don't remember how, but it was providential to say the least. And just quickly to share about myself, I'm originally from Southern California, and my husband is from Ohio, and we met in 2012. We got married in 2014. He's a high school social studies teacher, so he's got a lot of experience with high school kids. And in 2015, we learned that we could not have children, and the only route would be IVF as a possibility, but as Catholics, we just could not go down that route. And so, and then the doctor also said, well, then if not IVF, then maybe you should think about adoption. And neither of us were ready at the time. So through a lot of prayer and discernment in 2017, we decided to explore international adoption. And by 2018, we had our son. He's 5 years old now. He turned 5 last week, and we adopted him at 23 months from China. And currently, we are waiting to adopt another boy from China, and he turned 3 last October. And we're just waiting on that process because of COVID. It's been delayed. So there's another aspect of patience there. And it's been an amazing journey, and my husband and I are just so grateful for this blessing. Like, it's really just a blessing, and obviously there are aspects of it that are challenging, which we can explore. But yeah, that's our story.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mentioned on the last episode that I think it's really one of the things we want to do with this podcast is like just hear from different women, hear from different couples and their experiences, and just recognize that like infertility takes a lot of different paths for different people, but also like God's plan for fruitfulness comes forth in like many different ways. So it's just really just a blessing to be able to like hear from different women and different couples about how God's like working in their lives. So thank you for sharing that. One thing you mentioned was discernment. And I know we had an adoption date night on Friday that you both were there to talk and share your experiences, which was really wonderful. And one thing that came up was like this discernment piece. I think we hear about that, in our Catholic tradition quite a bit as far as like major life decisions and really taking them to God and discerning his will for us. And so one thing I wanted to ask both of you was like, okay, so with infertility, we come to this path. Sometimes it looks like what you mentioned, Jen, where, it's pretty clear that there's not going to be a possibility for biological parenthood, or very unlikely maybe. And then, we're still asked to be fruitful and we want to be open to God's plan. So, and then other times, it might be that we're still trying to conceive or open to conceiving, and maybe there's a greater chance. And so that can look like that looks a little bit different, obviously, when it comes to discerning adoption or another call to fruitfulness. So I wanted to ask you both, like, what was that process like for discerning this call to adoption, and like how was prayer a part of it, or what else, like what other practical ways did you find you were able to discern adoption? I'll start with you, Kimberly.
Well, I think I was always open to the idea of adoption. That was something that I thought about as a little girl. I always thought how wonderful it would be to adopt. And but my husband was not so open to it. And I think the best way that we kind of went about discerning was finding people who had adopted and learning their stories and talking. I mean, I reached out to everybody I could find who had adopted, and I would ask them, how they discerned it, and if the husband was a little bit more reticent than the wife to do so. And I was finding that as kind of a common occurrence. So then I would have my husband talk to these men and hear their experiences of being perhaps, kind of fearful about adoption, thinking, how can I love a child that did not, that is not biologically related to me? And then these dads afterwards saying that they couldn't imagine their lives without their children, and that that their children, there's no possible way they could feel any more attached, or, like that they felt like these are our children. And so I think doing that kind of helped my husband to see that this was a different path, but that it was something that could be very beautiful, that he would be happy, he'd be happy in the end, which he is. And he actually, he'll thank me occasionally, just like, thank you so much for kind of pushing me when I was sort of afraid to go down this path. And now look, we have these 4 beautiful children we've been able to adopt. And he's like, I'm so grateful.
Love that. It's beautiful to hear that witness. How about you, Jen? What was that like? You mentioned a little bit about it, but what was that discernment process like for you and your husband?
So ours was, aspects of it were similar. My husband had mentioned in the meeting on Friday, he had not wanted to adopt at all. That was not on his radar. But to his credit, about 2 years into our infertility, he was exploring stuff on Google, and he even shared it to me once. And I was not ready, but I will say I too had felt this calling to adopt ever since I was a child. My favorite TV show as a child was called Second Noah, and it was about this family that had children from every ethnic background. And then I did a project on Josephine Baker as a child, in 6th grade, and she adopted children from every ethnic background. And so just as I got older, there was always that desire to bring children into my home who weren't necessarily biologically mine. And I even got to work on an adoption process when I was interning in law school, and I visited an orphanage in Thailand when I was interning there. And I was a culture and politics major in college. So like just different parts of me, God was preparing me for a child that had a different culture. And for my husband, when I finally was ready to adopt, and I brought it up to him. I had my bullet points of pros and cons. He had to have the list really helped, I think, for him. He didn't speak to any other fathers or husbands. I actually did that for myself because I needed to be in a place where I knew I could get support, but he didn't need that. And when my husband found our son's profile, he was all in, and even he was guarded as well. But he was definitely more all in than I was. And then after we adopted our son, he was already ready for the next one, and I wasn't yet ready. So, and I think God knows that, which is why we're still waiting. But yeah, so that's kind of our path.
I love that. I love the way you put that God was preparing you. Like,
yes.
It's just a beautiful how like our journeys really, like he prepares us for all different things throughout our lives. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. Another thing that has come up, I know, with conversations with like different people about this is like the grief aspect. So infertility, obviously, it's something we talk about a lot. The experience of infertility is something that should be grieved, like that deserves to be grieved because it's a real loss. And so one thing that I know I sometimes have on my heart and others I've talked to is like, what does that grief, like it's something that I'm expecting will be there throughout my whole life in some way, although like it's already lessened in some ways in the 4 years that I've been dealing with it. But like, how has your experience of infertility grief changed, like with adoption, or through adoption or in the experience of adoption? Either one of you. Kimberly.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess for me, I think that I had come to a place of acceptance. I'd done everything we could do. Basically, that's how I felt. We did everything that was, licit, and I was just done. I was tired. I didn't want to do it anymore, and I feel like I had gotten to a place where I could accept not having a biological child, but then I felt like I could not accept not having children in my home. And so at that point, I thought, well, I want us to look into adoption. And like I said, my husband wasn't quite there. He just kept saying, well, let's just keep trying. Let's just keep trying. But I was just done. I was 42. I said, I'm done. I'm done trying. I'm like, God can make, if God wants me to get pregnant, like he can make that happen. I don't need to keep taking all the pills and doing all the, the surgeries and I was like, if he wants this to happen, it can happen. But I think we should start looking into another path. So once we brought our sweet Anthony home, and he was a foster baby, we did not know that we were going to get to adopt him. But I don't know, holding him in my arms, I felt like, my grief just kind of disappeared. And there was a fear that, we may not get to keep him. But I feel like the grace was overwhelming. I wasn't that afraid. I began to see this child as God's child, and that I was gifted with the opportunity to be his mother at this moment. I didn't know if I'd be his forever mother, but I was going to be his mother right now. And I just felt so much peace and joy. It was supernatural, because I thought before, how can I possibly give up a child, after, like, I'm not a mother, and then I'm a mother, and then the child goes back to his birth mom, and then what? I'm no longer a mother. Like, these were thoughts I had, but I realized that, God was calling me to be his mother at that point. And that would have, even if he had gone back, that piece of him, that would have always been with him, and it would have always been with me, that impact of that time together. So I don't know. I didn't really, I don't, and then when we found out we got to adopt him, my grief was just gone. It was gone. I was turned to joy.
That's awesome. Jen, what about you? What was it like for you?
Oh,
What has it been like?
Yeah, it's honestly been a roller coaster, and even after adopting, one thing about international adoption is it's typically a special needs situation, and like I said, our son was 23 months when we adopted him, so he had already had almost 2 years of his life with nannies and caretakers, and he had already developed a lot of his personality. And there were just moments where I broke down and didn't know how I was gonna be a good mom for him. And my husband has been so strong, and he's really been incredibly supportive, and he's seen how it's been hard for me. So he's the one that encouraged me. You know, he would take my son so that I could attend the Springs in the Desert support group. And I think that has been incredibly instrumental in my healing. And it's why I wanted to be on this podcast, to just share with people how support is so important. I also want to say that if you're discerning adoption, but you're still grieving, like just keep discerning adoption, because if I had waited till the absolute complete healing of Springs in the Desert, I would be just so impatient for a child right now. But I have my son who kind of also helped me to heal, or not kind of, he did help me to heal. So he was a part of the process. And I think that yeah, it does take time, but I just feel like I'm in such a good place right now. And I do highly recommend support groups, especially if you're open to that, of course, but that has been a godsend for me.
I love that. I love what you both said. It's like, well, first of all, two very different, different experiences, but like, there's no, I don't know, like magic formula, right? Like, it's not like, okay, I've healed my infertility grief and then here we are. It's like, God's always working through every moment and every opportunity, and he's always healing us. Like the whole healing journey, I think, is lifelong. And I just love your very different experiences, but like they're both beautiful, showing that, God is working even when we feel like things just aren't making sense, or we feel that infertility grief. Like he still has that plan for us, and it's unfolding like right now too.
Mm-hmm.
And you both spoke about marriage too in different ways. Like Kimberly, with your experience, like you were there with Greg, like helping him to kind of like see, and then now you shared that he's so grateful. Like it's just a beautiful witness. And then you, Jen, kind of your husband's support when you weren't feeling necessarily like on top of the world in certain ways. So it's just, I just love hearing from both of you about that, because I think for anyone who's dealing with infertility or adoption, like that piece of supporting each other in marriage is so important. So thank you for sharing that. And then also like the community piece, you both have mentioned like ways that the community has lifted you up. And I'm really grateful because you are also like giving back to the community now through sharing your stories and helping other people who are, actively discerning this or experiencing that grief, or, in whatever place they're in this journey. So those are all really good points. So I mentioned that this episode's going to air the day before Thanksgiving. And one thing that we talk about a lot with Springs in the Desert is like, we can have gratitude. Like we have so much to be thankful for, even if things are really difficult right now. And I know with infertility, obviously there are many difficult things for a lot of people, regardless of where they are in the journey. And then I know also with adoption, sometimes there's a moment where it seems like things aren't coming together with an adoption plan, or sometimes there's adoptions that don't work out, or sometimes there's just a lot of waiting. So I wondered if you both could speak to like how to give thanks in those moments, like how to hold on to that, that truth that, God does have a plan, even when it feels like it's taking a long time, or, there's a tendency maybe to focus on what we don't have rather than what we do have.
Yeah, I think our adoption journey was definitely a big roller coaster with agencies falling through, adoptions falling through. And it felt like, okay, why is this not happening? Why is this so hard? Why, but I feel like God gave us this grace of perseverance, to just keep saying, know he has a plan. I know he has a plan. I know we, I mean, I always pray for more faith. I pray for more faith, but I did have a lot of faith that God did have a beautiful plan and he was going to work it out. And it's been a complete miracle. I mean, because I think, I think that I had this sense that we were going to have children in our home. So I did have this sense we would have children, and that I was fighting for those kids. I was fighting for them before they even were here. I was fighting for them. So, we were supposed to adopt a little baby in Reno, Nevada. I flew out there for the birth, and it fell through. And we were supposed to adopt another baby up in Michigan. And then the birth mother changed her mind, which is, completely fine and allowed. And, but I just kept feeling like, okay, all right. So that wasn't the child for us. That wasn't the child for us. And it's funny because I had picked out names for all these different children, and God has since brought us the children. We've used all the names. So, my little sweet Zaylee, I'm like, well, I thought that baby in Reno was going to be my Zaylee, but look, I mean, nope, it was you. So it's funny because, it's been amazing. I mean, just amazing and miraculous to watch God work, and just to see that our family is not like a natural family. It's a supernatural family. And, we talk to the kids about this all the time, how God brought us together. I mean, it was nothing that we could do. I mean, it's just miraculous that we have adopted, Anthony. And then when he was just a little guy, he was just a year, we found out about the twins. So then we adopted twins who are only 5 months younger than our son. So then suddenly I had triplets, and it was completely insane. And then we were praying for more. And when they were 4 years old, we received our little John Paul, and he was a foster baby. And it was a beautiful experience because the children all were involved. And we said, well, there's this little baby and he needs a family right now. So we're going to be his family right now. We don't know if we're going to get to keep him, but we're going to have him for as long as God wants him here. And we all were just in love with him. And the children would go with me to the visits with the birth mother and meet her and see her crying. And I would say, this is how your birth mothers were, guys. This is so hard. It's so hard because she wants her baby so badly, but she just can't take care of him. And so the children got to see that. And so they felt more at peace with their own stories. And so I just feel very grateful that our story has evolved the way that it has. And I just can't even imagine anything different.
How about you, Jen? What about, thank you so much, Kimberly. That's really, really beautiful. Jen, what would you say about, holding on to hope? And I know you're in the midst of waiting right now, and COVID has added some complications for you and timing and everything. So what does that look like for you to give thanks, even in those difficult moments?
I think for me specifically, and also my husband, the gratitude is really in seeing God's work in our life. It's, and as Kimberly has said, the supernatural aspect. I couldn't agree more with how fast our son's adoption process went. He knew, okay, you guys are ready, and here comes your son. It was so fast. It was less than a year from when we saw his profile to when we adopted him. And everything just fell into place. We met the right adoptive families to help us with the process. And a lot of them are here where we live too, which was like God put us in the right place to be. And then with this process of waiting for our potential son, it has been challenging, but in every step of the way, God has given us so much peace. And often I think to myself, I don't understand why I'm at so much peace with this. That, a lot of adoptive families waiting have just been in a lot of anguish, and I feel for them, but I'm also just in awe of how God is protecting us. Not to say God's not protecting them, of course, but I don't know exactly how to explain just this sense of peace that He's given us in the process of waiting. And at the same time, having met Kimberly and her telling us about foster to adopt, that's something we're starting to explore now too, because I know my husband mentioned last year, oh yeah, I was thinking about adopting a third after we get our son in China. And I never thought in a million years he would even be considering that. And we wouldn't be eligible for international after this. So to think, oh, there's this whole new avenue of foster to adopt we could explore. So thank you, Kimberly. That's something I think he's more open to, and I'm more open to. And it wouldn't have been the case if I had just closed myself in, and if we had not put ourselves out there. So it's really just gratitude for even the hardships. Everything is just it's an ability to see God and His mercy in every situation. So that's been my takeaway.
Beautiful. Thank you. Maybe to kind of close out, we could just, if there's a couple out there who's, they're just not sure, they feel like this is overwhelming, they want to be open to it, but they're just, they're maybe afraid to take a first step. Is there some practical advice you could throw their way about how to because this isn't obviously something that happens overnight, and you don't necessarily decide overnight to pursue this. So what's a way that practically speaking that a couple could just start to explore or take a first step toward adoption? Maybe both of you could share just some practical tips.
I think that just calling the local children's services and finding out about how to become a foster parent, just to find out. You don't have to commit to it. And you could just start coming to some of the classes. They offer these classes, and you can just start the process. There's no cost involved at all. They actually pay you to take the classes, and you can just start going, just very slowly. You can start going through the process and go ahead and if you want to continue, you could go ahead and get your home study done. And then that just leaves, so if you have your home study and you've gone through the classes, at that point, you can do respite. So for example, if there's, a couple a family who has foster children, if they need help for a few days with those children, you could just get those children for a couple of days and just have these foster children in your home and see what that's like. See what it's like to have a newborn. See what it's like to have, a sibling group of, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. See what it's like to have a teenager, I'll tell you, just getting involved with foster care, you can have these preconceived notions of what these children might be like. I have been blown away. I mean, I have met beautiful teenage boys in foster care that I would absolutely have in my home, adopt. Because you get these preconceived notions. Oh, they've been so hurt that they're just angry and violent. No, that's not always the case. You just open yourself up to be surprised. Allow God to just put the children in your home that He wants. But I just think that is a really an easy way. There's no money involved. You're not spending thousands and thousands of dollars, and you can just start slowly walking down that path and meeting people and who are doing the same thing and finding out their stories, and that might lead you somewhere where you hadn't expected.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Thank you, Kimberly. That's a great idea there. How about you, Jen? Do you have any practical ideas for couples who just want to open themselves up to this opportunity, possibility, and discerning?
Yeah. For our experience of international adoption, we were fortunate to have multiple families in our community that adopted internationally. And I like to email people. So email, reach out, whatever. So one site, I had met a mother who had adopted domestically through private adoption here. And then she connected me to all these other mothers. And then also another, a mom who had fostered, she connected me to other mothers she knew too. So it's really just that community aspect again. And specifically talking to mothers who had internationally adopted, they were able to connect me to their children and just to hear what their children had to say and to see the love in their families, that opened my heart even more. So that to me was free way, and then you develop relationships too, and these are long lasting relationships. We are still good friends with these families. My son calls one of them aunt, so yeah, that's like a very simple and practical way to learn more about adoption, be it internationally or domestic, or whatever option you decide to take.
And I just want to mention there are some really amazing films out there about adoption. And one that's on Netflix right now is called Found. And I watched it yesterday, and it's absolutely beautiful. It gives the story of 3 girls who are, they were adopted from China. And they go back and are searching for their birth parents and going back to the orphanages where they came from. And it's just, there's so many really good films and books out there. I have a book, Wait No More, that really impacted me. This couple who adopted 4 children out of foster care. And when I read that, it just gave me hope. Like, there are children out there that need to be adopted. And, you can adopt, because it just seems like, oh, there's so many people waiting. It's impossible. It's too expensive. No, there are children that are out there waiting right now for a family, and you can do it. I mean, I just want to give hope that it's possible.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll definitely put those resources in the show notes for sure, so that y'all can find them. And then I just want to mention too, if you need prayers, or if you want to get in touch with these women or others in our ministry, definitely send us a message or email us. You can find all that info on our website, springsinthedesert.org. And we can definitely, I know Kimberly loves to talk with everyone who has any questions about adoption. And I'm sure that Jen would be more than willing to email with you. She says she's all over email. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so definitely go to our website and we can get in touch. And yeah, just wanted to thank you both so much. This has been a really beautiful conversation and very inspiring and encouraging, and I know that many hearts will be touched by it. So just thank you for being willing to share your story, both of you. And Jen, thank you for coming on. And it's a little scary for the podcast sometimes to just walk on and do a podcast, but it's just been a really wonderful conversation. So thank you so much for coming on.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you
thank you for letting me share.
Yeah. All right. Well, this will wrap up our conversation for today, and we hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we will see you on our next episode, which will come out in early December. And until then, God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us for this Springs in the Desert podcast episode. If you have a minute, please rate and review us so that we can reach more listeners. Check out our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram, and go to our website, springsinthedesert.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter and hear about more things that we have going on. Most importantly, remember that God loves you so much, and so do we.